The United States declare independence. Unorganized territory becomes Northwest Territory. In North Carolina, ceded land is unorganized. Unorganized territory becomes Southwest Territory. Vermont enters the Union. The District of Columbia is formed. The Erie Triangle is ceded to Pennsylvania. Kentucky enters the Union. Disputed territory is ceded to Georgia. Tennessee enters the Union. Mississippi Territory is formed from Georgian land. Indiana Territory is formed from Northwest Territory. Connecticut Western Reserve is ceded to Northwest Territory. Disputed territory is ceded to the U.S. as unorganized. Ohio enters the Union, ceding land to Indiana Territory. Louisiana is purchased. Unorganized territory is ceded to Mississippi Territory. Orleans Territory is formed from the Louisiana Purchase, which becomes the District of Louisiana. Michigan Territory is formed from Indiana Territory. The District of Louisiana becomes Louisiana Territory. Illinois Territory is formed from Indiana Territory. Hawaii declares independence. Land starts being disputed between West Florida and the U.S. Louisiana enters the Union. The disputed territory is added to Mississippi Territory. Louisiana Territory becomes Missouri Territory. Indiana enters the Union. Alabama Territory is formed from Mississippi Territory. Mississippi enters the Union. North extent of Missouri Territory is revised and Oregon County begins to be shared with the UK. Illinois enters the Union, ceding land to Michigan Territory. Arkansas Territory is formed from Missouri Territory. Alabama enters the Union. Maine enters the Union. Florida is purchased and the border of Mexico revised. Missouri enters the Union, ceding land is unorganized. Mexico declares independence. Florida Territory is formed and Arkansas Territory is respelled. Arkansas Territory shrinks. Arkansas Territory shrinks again. Michigan Territory grows. Texas declares independence. Arkansas enters the Union. Wisconsin Territory is formed from Michigan Territory. Michigan enters the Union. Missouri grows. Iowa Territory is formed from Wisconsin Territory. Border dispute with Rupert's Land resolved. Florida enters the Union. Texas enters the Union. Oregon County stops being shared with the UK. Iowa enters the Union, ceding land is unorganized. Land is ceded as unorganized from Mexico. Wisconsin enters the Union, ceding land is unorganized. Oregon Territory is formed. Minnesota Territory is formed. California enters the Union. Texas shrinks and New Mexico and Utah territories are formed. Washington Territory is formed from Oregon Territory. Land is ceded to New Mexico Territory from Mexico. Unorganized territory becomes Nebraska, Kansas, and Indian Territories. Minnesota enters the Union, ceding land is unorganized. Oregon enters the Union, ceding land to Washington Territory. Greer County starts being disputed between Texas and Indian Territory. Kansas enters the Union. The Confederacy declares independence. Colorado Territory formed from Utah, Nebraska, and New Mexico Territories. Dakota Territory is formed from Nebraska and unorganized territory, and Nevada Territory formed from Utah Territory. The Confederacy forms Arizona Territory from the Union's New Mexico Territory. Utah Territory cedes land to Nevada Territory. The Union forms Arizona Territory from New Mexico Territory. Idaho Territory is formed from Washington, Dakota, and Nebraska Territories. West Virginia enters the Union. Montana Territory formed from Idaho Territory, and Idaho Territory cedes land to Dakota Territory. Nevada enters the Union. The Confederacy re-enters the Union. Utah Territory cedes land to Nevada. Arizona Territory cedes land to Nevada. Nebraska enters the Union. Russian America is ceded as the Department of Alaska. Wyoming Territory is formed from Dakota, Idaho, and Utah Territories. Colorado enters the Union. Department of Alaska becomes the District of Alaska. North and South Dakota entered the Union. Montana enters the Union. Washington enters the Union. Oklahoma Territory is formed from Indian Territory in the Neutral Strip. Idaho enters the Union. Wyoming enters the Union. Hawaii becomes a republic. Utah enters the Union. Greer County is ceded to Oklahoma Territory. Hawaii is ceded as Hawaii Territory. Oklahoma enters the Union. New Mexico enters the Union. Arizona enters the Union. The District of Alaska becomes Alaska Territory. Alaska enters the Union. Hawaii enters the Union.